are we attracted to? And why? What defines our identity? Social norms tell us who we can love and how we can dress based on whether we are a man or a woman. We define and separate ourselves with words like gay and straight, or male and female. But what does it all mean? There are people all over the world who do not fit into these narrow definitions. Consequently, they suffer hate, violence, murder, and suicide because of the public's lack of understanding.
Suicide of Warren County teen.
We are taught to believe that our identity and our tendencies are black and white.
Just say you're gay. Just come out.
Yet there is evidence that tells a very different story.
We don't have language to describe men who are attracted to trans women.
We notice exciting people of different shapes, colors, sizes, and attractions. Yet because of a lack of education or unfamiliarity, we feel we do not know how to approach these people.
Bro, that's a tranny. You little faggot.
You're a tranny, bro. Seems like there's a bigger dick than me.
Why do some of us find it difficult to recognize that two people of the same sex can be in love? Or that a male can have a feminine nature? Or a female, a masculine nature? Is it because of tradition? Or is there a deeper reason? For the first time in recorded history, we are going to look at the bigger picture and present a completely new way of looking at what has been called gender and sexuality. Has our language and science given us an accurate understanding of our self-expression and who we are attracted to? Or could there be a world hidden in plain sight, much, much more diverse than we realize?
Summer wardrobe sorted at misguided.co.uk.
Bring it to all
This is me. My name is Luca, I'm 28 years old, and I am the creator of The Gender Code. I direct, write, produce, and animate. Since I was a kid, I love life. I always loved things that were beautiful. I love colours. I love fashion. I love everything that's feminine and magical. I have dreams. I love having fun and expressing myself. I love having a laugh with my friends. There have been the good times. I'm Princess Ariel. So I started to express myself more feminine. I started to wear clothes that I love and I started to find the magic. But every time I went out and I dressed up, every time I hit a brick wall, no matter how much I tried to express my inner magic or my art, I did everything from surgery to fashion. No matter how feminine I looked, it was the same cycle over and over again.
What are you doing, bro? I thought you were straight. She's got a dick.
Gender fluid or trans. There's nothing wrong
them.
with being questioning and speaking about matters of gender diversity.
Trump administration officials are considering legally defining gender as somebody's biological sex at birth.
I quickly began to realize that there was no language or space for people like me. I learned that our self-expression and who we love was one size fits all based on our biological sex, and that my story was connected to millions of other people's stories around the world.
It was very dark and lonely. You know, I ended up homeless on the streets for a couple of years.
We have begun to insist that our identities, that ourselves exist beyond our bodies.
We are the goddess. Transgender people are goddess and spiritual leaders.
I was bullied violently. I'd often get a clip around the ear hole from my dad who'd say, "Why are you talking like an effing puff?"
When I started this documentary, I began because I wanted to find out about trans issues and what went wrong. But I began to realise that this was a much bigger picture and a much bigger story than I ever imagined and I ever envisioned.
Straight men are attracted to trans women.
There are men all around the world who are very attracted to feminine males and transgender women.
I identify as being straight, but I'm attracted to femininity, whether that's transgender.
It took me on a journey through the darkest parts of the world, revealing a broken system, hypocrisy, lies.
Heterosexual cisgendered men will only engage with trans women in the dark.
I became witness to a reality of men attracted to gender feminine people in a dimension that didn't exist yet in public space. With limited language and models to reference, I felt like a mermaid with no voice. Men don't give themselves a chance to love me, and if they do, they don't act on it because of their family and reputation. It's so painful. I feel we're in a world where there is magic and a spectrum of so much potential, love and light.
Bring it on me, man.
That's being held hostage by an invisible system that we can recognize as patriarchy or lad culture.
When society teaches men that expressing their emotions is unacceptable, they repress them instead.
I owe my life to my sisters and brothers of yesterday, who have come before me to fight for me to be who I am today. Now it's my turn to fight for my sisters and brothers of tomorrow. At 28 years old, I realised that my dreams have been held hostage by an outdated system rooted in superstition and lies, and that the only way to be free and to move forward is to change how we view gender and sexuality. It's time that we change, and my girls all around the world are worth more than that. We are experiencing a gender revolution. Not only a gender revolution, but a revolution of humanity.
The gender binary is being questioned more than ever before, and a new generation is moving towards genuine fluidity, redefining gender as we know it.
For the next 2 hours, we will take you with us on a journey through the past, the present, and the future. From my perspective and from what I've learned and from what I understand, we paint a bigger picture of how we got here and where we're going. Although we don't know where the story ends, we certainly know how we see things today, right here in our present.
At the moment of our birth, we are presented with a myriad of people who have been separated into binary groups known as male and female.
Johnny Seven's got him on the run. Barbie! It's Barbie!
From an early age, we notice differences and learn specific ways to dress and behave based on this separation. Some of these differences are natural and physical.
Boys have a penis, girls have a vagina.
And others are tendencies we adapt to and learn through culture and tradition.
The little woman has to do around the house.
We have become familiar and comfortable with men and women having distinct differences as we define them. Typically, we are familiar with women being more feminine and men being more masculine, both by how we appear and behave. As of now, our society gives us a system of identifying ourselves from the perspective of 3 distinct states. Firstly, they tell us that our physical body differences we are born with, our genitals, is called our sex.
With an X chromosome, you became a female.
The state of being male or female.
It determines the sex of the offspring.
Then, based on whether we are male or female, expectations of our nature are automatically made on how we should all dress, behave, and think. Males are assumed to play a more masculine social role, and females are assumed to play a more feminine social role. This is called our gender. We understand that the intimate relationship of 2 people creates a union of chemistry and romance that can create love and new life. Tradition and society familiarizes us with the idea that it is only males and females who can naturally share this type of connection and intimacy. Lastly, our preference in terms of attraction is called our sexuality. It is automatically assumed that these three states always come in sequence and are black and white. For example, if a person is born the sex of male, then that person is assumed to have a masculine gender and be attracted to females only. Everything in life, including tradition, culture, media, and education systems, reinforces this black and white way of thinking.
The dating capital of the world. It's the dating game.
Incredible Ibiza weekend.
But does this work for everyone? For some of us, we fit perfectly into this system of life.
We're 5 lads.
Out of all the boys that are here then, which one would you crack on with?
That one.
A male is what we have learned about how a man should look and behave. And a female is what we have learned about how a woman should look and behave. Together, the two make a perfect, happy union that is familiar and natural to us. We are oblivious to anything beyond what we traditionally understand.
Year-old Matthew Shepard was found beaten and unconscious last week. Acceptance of transgender.
But what about all the people who can't live this way?
Most Americans are repelled by the mere notion of homosexuality.
Homosexuality is, in fact, a mental illness.
I thought you were straight. She's got a dick.
There are people who stand tall in our society who contradict the idea that our gender and sexuality is black and white. These states of being are not yet recognized or understood by the mainstream. Why is this?
Tax cuts and gender.
Fluid, trans, matters of gender diversity.
Beyond genitalia.
Many of us feel really confused.
My gender identity is non-binary. My gender expression is more masculine.
Gender identity.
The trans community.
Gender not. Transgender.
Transgender.
Murders of 3 transgender.
The victim was attacked because he's gay.
LGBTQ citizens. The Trump administration wants to legally define transgender out of existence.
The transgender movement.
People who identify as transgender people.
I am transgender.
People that date trans people really sort of see
Gender dysphoria.
Transgender.
This is reality.
In the early 20th century, at the dawn of a revolution, our planet witnessed a time of great change, discovery, and transformation.
As a planner of a new world order.
Having been virtually invisible in a previous age of darkness and oppression, women and African Americans now had rights for the first time in history.
I have a dream to one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character.
And their actions began to push those in power to recognize that everyone deserved equal rights, regardless of race or sex. Around this time of change, scientists and scholars noticed another awakening.
It was up to us to correct that mistake one way or the other.
It was finally acknowledged that two people of the same sex can have an intimate relationship.
In those days, many people denied that homosexuality existed at all.
It was acknowledged that people were born one sex,
Sexual and transvestite.
but felt they had the characteristics of what was traditionally expected of the other sex.
Alan decided to become a woman.
A theory and language rapidly surfaced that attempted to describe these non-traditional behaviors. People who had feelings for a person of the same sex were branded homosexual, gay, or lesbian.
The homosexuals. Homosexuality is an enigma. Homosexual.
And people who behaved in a way that was familiar to us only in the opposite sex were branded transgender or transsexual. In the early 20th century, a Jewish-German sexologist named Dr. Magnus Hirschfeld recognized that there were three genders: men, women, and the third gender. Hirschfeld coined the word transsexual. He was a pioneer of his time who performed the world's first sex change in 1930.
Transsexual and a transvestite differ.
There should be 30,000 transsexuals of both sides in the United States.
Before long, the world had invented a vocabulary that defined a person based on their behavior and attraction. For years after, our consciousness would be met with ignorance, fear, and a lack of understanding.
Hey baby, won't you take a chance? Say that you'll let me have this dance. Oh, let's dance. Oh, let's dance.
That's a very lovely dress, too, that you're wearing, Simone. Where did you buy it?
Oh, I made it myself.
Ladies and gentlemen, these very, very charming contestants is breaking the law. You see, each of our contestants is a man. It should be obvious to you that you don't lead a normal life. You ever have dates with men who don't know that you're a man?
Most of the times they don't.
And what do they do when they find out?
Well, they don't really care.
When did you first discover that you were effeminate?
Well, I think we ought to clear up what's feminine and what's gay.
Well, what's the difference? Now, Simone, you openly admit that you're a homosexual. Let's say you were dressed as a girl. When was the first time you went out with a boy? Dickie, you say you're engaged. Is he homosexual or is he straight?
No, he's straight, masculine.
Let me ask you this question. If he's masculine, wouldn't it be more normal for him to go out with a girl?
2 out of 3 Americans look upon homosexuals with disgust, discomfort, or fear.
1 out of 10 says hatred. No man is born homosexual. Sexual behavior is learned behavior. Cure is uncertain. Some studies indicate that as many as 1/3 of those who seek help eventually become heterosexual.
There may be some here today that will be homosexual in the future. There may be some girls that'll turn lesbian. We don't know, but it's serious. Don't kid yourselves about it. They can be anywhere. We ought to know we've arrested all of them. So if any one of you have let yourself become involved with another boy, you better stop quick, because 1 out of 3 of you will turn queer, and you will be caught, because this is one thing you cannot get away with. This is one thing that if you don't get caught by us, you'll be caught by yourself, and the rest of your life will be a living hell.
In the early 20th century, Christianity had more sway over people, making society traditional and conventional.
America needs a tidal wave of the old-time religion.
Doesn't tradition mean anything?
It was a sin to be homosexual. Consequently, homosexuality was a criminal offense.
Sentiment is against permitting homosexual relationships without legal punishment.
Minimum imprisonment of the homosexual.
The Bible condemns homosexuality. Churchmen have called it unnatural, unmanly, ungodly.
Suspicion and fear were widespread, as they had been during the witch hunts and the Inquisition. Anyone who was seen as sexually perverse was thought to have both a moral and mental illness.
Homosexuality is in fact a mental illness. Homosexuality is an illness. Homosexuality is a problem. These people are a fit subject for a mental health program.
Psychologists tried to cure the mental problem, while doctors tried to cure the physical. Electroshock therapy was used to try to cure a person of homosexuality.
This involved showing the gay man pictures of nude males and shocking him with a strong electric current. Over a short period of time, he will be unable to get sexually aroused to the pictures. And hopefully he will be unable to get sexually aroused outside in other settings as well.
Techniques used in conversion therapy prior to 1981 in the US and Western Europe included ice-pick lobotomies and chemical castrations with hormonal treatment. Aversive treatment was applied, such as the application of electric shock to induce vomiting until the person hated their body and thought differently. Routine police raids and investigation committees allowed police to witch hunt and arrest people who were known as homosexual or transsexual.
During the year of 1964, we arrested 3,000 homosexuals.
For me as a person in 2019 to look back, we had no way of connecting to each other like we do today. We didn't have the technology. We didn't have the social media capabilities that we have today. I can't even begin to imagine the darkness and the pain that these people went through back then.
Most people were either imprisoned or murdered. Consequently, most would go into hiding or commit suicide due to the unbearable fear, the suppression of their true spirit, and the shame felt by their family.
I had one friend who was beaten savagely by his father.
We do not employ homosexuals, and that if we discover homosexuals in our department, we discharge them.
The homosexual, bitterly aware of his rejection, responds by going underground. They frequent their own clubs and bars where they can escape the disapproving eye of the society that they call straight.
The dilemma of the homosexual. Told by the medical profession he is sick. By the law that he is a criminal. Shunned by employers, rejected by heterosexual society. He remains anonymous, a displaced person, an outsider.
Loneliness and suicide, because most of the homosexuals and drag queens, they get to a certain age and they don't want to live no more. I've just about hit that age.
You ever felt that you wanted to end your life?
Oh, many times.
Holding hands and kissing in the park. Straight people can do it, why can't we? They ain't no better than I am.
Having to lie, I feel the saddest part of being a homosexual. I'm just sorry that it took so long. I'm sorry that I spent so many years in the closet.
On June 28, 1969, a riot broke out at the Stonewall Bar in Greenwich Village. Decided if they wouldn't take it anymore, men in dresses kicked up their heels as lesbians and others threw bricks and coins at the police.
On a June evening in New York in 1969, a routine police raid took place at the Stonewall Inn, a bar where gay and gender-diverse people would hang out. For the first time in history, gay and transgender people had had enough and fought back. Drag queens and gender-diverse people faced the police raids head-on.
It is truly a symbol of oppression, of how gay and lesbian people's lives were controlled by the society that said they were worthless.
The effect of the Stonewall riot was to change the direction of the gay movement.
This revolution in the air brought a new state of freedom and a new consciousness to everyone. From the 1970s, gay protests and pride parades occurred in Canada and the US for the first time. People all over the world began to come out as gay.
We want the freedoms to love and sometimes even to love a bit in public that belong to the heterosexuals in this country. We are just as happy a type human being as any other in this country.
The program we are about to present is a report on the gay liberation movement. Some of the scenes may be disturbing or shocking to some viewers. They are homosexuals. Men who relate sexually to other men, and they with women who relate sexually to other women, lesbians, have begun a battle for their civil, legal, and personal rights.
If we were going to go on a crusade across the nation and try to do away with the homosexuals, we would have done it on June the 8th, that with protests, all kinds of problems, and And Father, I want to ask that you forgive him.
That we love him.
And that we love him. And that we're praying for him to be delivered from his deviant lifestyle, Father.
Pioneers appeared on the stage of history, such as Harvey Milk, the first openly gay politician who was murdered in 1978.
There's a law that says gay people cannot be married, but there is no law that says two human beings cannot love one another.
Modern-day gay rights movement in the United States. They just want to celebrate 10 years of growing gay freedom in San Francisco.
Some observers feel that repeal of the ordinance would be the fault of these, the flamboyant gays.
Say it loud, gay and proud! Say it loud!
I find after long periods of darkness in history, there are rare sudden surges of electric revolutionary energy. Powerful movements like the Gay Liberation Front would be the foundation of the freedoms we enjoy today.
There is a rich legacy of revolutionary freedom fighters whose stories have been erased from history. Sylvia Rivera was an American drag queen whose fight was part of the spark to start the gay liberation movement.
I have been raped and beaten many times by men, heterosexual men.
Marsha P. Johnson, a gender-diverse drag legend, was one of the first to fight back at the Stonewall riots.
Darling, I want my gay rights now. I think it's about time the gay brothers and sisters got their rights.
After years of oppression, people were finally being free and experimenting sexually. By the mid-1970s, the sexual revolution was well underway.
How many years have you been a homosexual?
I was born homosexual. It's beautiful.
This beautiful revolution just so happened to coincide with something darker ascending under the surface.
The lifestyle of male homosexuals has triggered an epidemic of a rare form of cancer.
It's mysterious, deadly, and it's baffling medical science.
In 1981, a tragedy struck that would scar the LGBT community for decades.
We're dealing with some new, deadly, sexually transmitted disease.
HIV/AIDS was a sexually transmitted virus that killed millions around the world.
The disease has already claimed more victims, more than 800 cases nationwide.
The blame was put predominantly on gay people, and it became known as the gay disease. People were afraid to touch gay people.
These people were dying in their 20s. Their parents were sometimes disowning them, thrown out of hospital rooms. They lost their apartments.
As queer history remains largely undocumented, this period witnessed unimaginable injustices that have been left untold to the public. Hart Island, New York, was a burial ground for the thousands of unclaimed bodies of those who died of AIDS, disowned by families and discarded by hospitals, sometimes in trash bags. The government continued silencing the disease's reality and limiting it to the gay community. However, because humanity is more of a spectrum, we began to see those barriers quickly crossed over.
Once thought to affect only promiscuous homosexual males, AIDS is now spreading in epidemic proportions to other segments of the population.
Powerful movements like ACT UP were left with no choice but to become their own doctors, lawmakers and scientists that effectively created a plan to push for the life-saving medication we have today.
From ACT UP New York, you are witnessing the largest demonstration ever. We have an estimated 1,500 people here already. People are shortly be blocking the highway. We are expecting 300 more arrests.
We are here today with 50 direct action organizations from all over the country. AIDS Coalition, Organize, and Win.
Not enough rich, white, heterosexual men have gotten AIDS for anybody to give a shit.
The 1990s saw a time of cure and change. Events had moved people to push for full equality. Medication for HIV/AIDS saved lives.
40 million infected people is a plague. They say get back.
We are forced into this position. We are dying.
This is a community that was tested in a way almost no community on earth has ever tested.
The AIDS epidemic lost a rich legacy of heroes, a generation that are not here today to tell us the realities and stories about the truths of gender and sexuality, hidden truths that is up to our generation to rediscover.
The 1980s and 90s saw an era rich in creativity and art, a time when gay men expressed their natural femininity and self-expression through fashion, known as the Club Kid era.
For people who want to have fun, it has nothing to do if you're a boy or a girl. In between, it doesn't make a difference.
It's so much fun, and it's just creativity, and it's really great.
You need a mixture of everything. You need old, young, you need drag queens, you need straight people, you need gay. You need a little bit of everything in order to make the club work.
It's drag. I mean, everything you wear, this body you have is a vessel, and you're bigger. It's bigger than the both of us.
No, you say you're gay or straight. I don't believe anybody is anything. I am a man, and when I go into the bathroom in the morning, I'm quite aware of what I am.
The group dissipated in the mid-1990s with Mayor Rudy Giuliani's crackdown on Manhattan's nightclubs.
I feel that there are windows of opportunity throughout time that open and close for short cycles.
Well, I'm just being out and being wonderfully glamorous.
How sweet of you to say that.
Ever in your life said, I need to put on a dress and a wig, this is the time to do it.
Drag in itself has been in all the major magazines.
The 80s Club Kid era saw a wave of strong feminine expression that later went underground after 9/11.
The 9/11 terrorist attacks.
Fellow Americans, justice will be done.
I was born a boy.
Freak! Me, you a man.
The Play It Safe 2000s witnessed a mask-for-mask culture where femininity in its popularity was at an all-time low.
The pendulum swung so far to the right, it's going to come crashing back to the left, okay?
However, is it possible that the Trump era is seeing a resurgence of a lost generation?
Homosexuality began to be decriminalized in Western culture around the world.
Decriminalization made it possible for homosexuals to organize openly into a powerful lobby.
The next step was gay marriage. Marriage equality, or same-sex marriage, was legal for the first time in Canada in 2005. But same-sex couples all over the world were still struggling with a lack of spousal or property rights in the eyes of the law.
To legalize same-sex marriage.
Same-sex marriage in New Jersey, Hawaii,
Mexico, Pennsylvania, Illinois, same-sex marriage.
Gay marriage is legal.
In recent years, the US, UK, and Ireland have granted full marriage equality.
Britain has legalized same-sex marriage.
So I'm not surprised that the yes has been an incredible affirmation of a sort of a new Ireland in a way.
This morning, the Supreme Court recognized that the Constitution guarantees marriage equality.
The words we use to describe gay people have expanded from the scientific word homosexual to embracing a wider spectrum of identities presented to us as lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender. We know this today as LGBT. We have witnessed an awakening in our understanding of what we call gender and sexuality. We believe we know it all, yet there are many questions left unanswered. Society has passed down a story that would have us believe that our sexuality and gender is binary, meaning that a person is either gay or straight, either a man or a woman.
Is that a man or a woman?
Why do you dress this way?
If I look at trans girl, does that make me gay?
Can you define the term transgender?
I think it's like the one with the mangina.
I have no idea.
But that's for a girl. And you're not a girl, right?
You're a man. What you dress up as a woman for?
But is it that simple? Most of us have become familiar with gay people over the last few decades, but very few of us are yet aware of the spectrum of gender and its connection to broader sexual attractions. This is a culture of people who are born one sex, but who have personalities and self-expression that we so far only associate with the other sex. They have been made invisible to our consciousness
May now be changing America.
until now. Our first look is at transgender.
Hi Dragons, what's up? It's Nikita.
Hey guys,
what's up?
Hey everyone. Equality, acceptance, so this is for you guys.
I am 3 years on testosterone.
Hey guys, it's Jamie.
It's a story that needs to be told.
A person who is transgender is someone born one sex, but who feels they are only comfortable being the other sex. There are both trans men and trans women. It is a courtesy to call this person she if she identifies as female, and he if he identifies as male. This is Katie. She identifies as transgender, which means that she was born physically male but transitioned to the sex of a female. She is an example of one of the many beautiful transgender people today. Having surgery or taking hormone medication to transition from one sex to the other means the person is known as transsexual.
I am 3 years on testosterone. I'm over 2 years post-op top surgery.
Dysphoria means not connecting with your body in a certain sense.
Many of us happen to be trans.
Trans people are really coming to the fore at the moment, which is a great thing to see.
Yeah, so like me being transgender is like that.
That's not a big deal.
My natural behaviour was feminine. It wasn't learned from
What do you
anywhere.
mean?
I've had to medically transition so that the world can see my spirit.
Our next look is a more recent term that has entered our consciousness and is known as gender fluid.
Hi sisters, James Charles here. I love you and we will see you in the next one.
Hey guys, welcome.
Hi everyone, it's me, Joe.
What's up everybody? Welcome back to my channel.
I am Sean Miley Moore.
Hey queens, what's good?
Ladies and gentlemen and all fabulous identities in between.
A person who identifies as gender fluid is someone born one sex, but who has feelings and self-expression that we only associate with the other sex. They express themselves and their style independently, with a unique kind of beauty on their own level that suits their place on the spectrum.
Maybe I don't fit into the definition of man or woman or something else.
This is Jamie. He identifies as gender feminine. That means that his expression is more feminine, and he expresses this while also embracing his natural sex.
Oh, you're non-binary, so are you like 50-50 male, female? And I'm like, that does not make sense.
Contrary to assumption, gender fluidity is not about being a man one day and a woman the next, or a man dressing as a woman. Rather, the idea is about expressing a gender that feels right for you, while not being ashamed of or trying to hide your natural sex, or feeling the need for medical transition.
There are all types of people on the spectrum. Some people want to have surgery, some people don't have surgery. I think it's very important to acknowledge that everyone has a different place on the spectrum.
There's no wrong way to be trans.
Acknowledging the things that cannot be changed, like my voice, my wide shoulders.
Gender to me is a bit like, it exists, like it's real, and it informs how humans interact with each other a great deal, and it's important, but we made it up.
For me, the idea of gender is a way to describe the polarity of human traits. Its idea is real and relevant, but its placement is completely made up. I've learned most people are somewhere between the masculine and feminine spectrum.
You must be gay. And I said, no, I'm straight.
But outdated social norms have made this reality shameful and invisible. When I started to explore my expression, I thought I was transgender. As I went on, some things are not for me. I don't take hormones and I'm comfortable with my body and my voice. I express more feminine, yet I accept my biology. I've learned it's all a case of outdated language.
No language out there. There was no YouTube tutorials like there is now. I had no reference point. I didn't know what was going to happen.
I feel gender diverse people are a very important link to society that have been overlooked. We break down toxic social expectations and bring people together through a powerful mix of femininity and masculinity.
Look who has just arrived. You came back. Gary's the most lit of us all.
It wasn't about, oh, I want to be a woman, I want to be a man. It was about, I am everything. Can I get an amen up in it?
I still had long hair and I presented myself as more feminine.
For me right now, I'm just living my life.
There are many other artistic expressions. Drag queens are stage performers who exaggerate and have fun with identity and traditional gender roles for the sake of comedy or performance.
Shantae, you stay, honey. RuPaul's Drag Race. The only thing that we're going to be mopping is the floor with you, honey.
Gender diversity is not new to our reality. American Indians viewed androgynous or gender-diverse people as gifted and powerful by nature. They were known as being two-spirited. Families who had them were seen as lucky.
To be that kind of person means that there's some kind of balance or interaction between the male and female elements. You see further because you can see in both directions. The whole issue that if you are a man and you have a sexual relationship with a berdache, you're not having sex with another man, you're having sex with a berdache. So the partners of the berdache technically are never homosexual because they're not having sex with their same gender. Interestingly enough, a number of traditional cultures saw it to be inappropriate for a berdache to have sex with another berdache. That was considered unnatural. If you think about a stick that has male on one end and female on the other end, sexuality or gender is the same stick, but you have opposite ends. This is the category you get caught in and European tradition, either or, straight or gay, male or female. But if you take those two ends and you bend them together so you form a circle, then you end up with a possibility of an infinite number of points along that circle. And people change during different times in their life, that you're not trapped into only one way of thinking or only one way of being.
When the Europeans invaded North America as early as the 11th century, they forced the gender-diverse people to dress and act in European culturally imposed gender roles. Religious influences quickly erased this spectrum before it could be encoded in history books.
During the Crusades, when the French fur traders, trappers, missionaries, explorers came into contact with Indian people who were different, we get trapped a lot of times because being forced to speak in English, we're herded into using certain kinds of terminology, trying to refer to things that aren't really translatable.
We are noticing that our sexuality is not as simple as being gay or straight. Throughout history, gay people would seem to be obsessed with straight acting.
Gay people are really obsessed with everything that's straight acting.
Community, I want them to be straight acting.
In other words, they would appear to have a sexual desire for their partner to dress and behave in a way that we traditionally connect with that sex. For example, with lesbians, it's sexually desirable for women to act like a woman, to be feminine, in other words, not masculine.
Feminine lesbian likes to date other feminine lesbians. And another lesbian, her attraction to butch women, she might as well just go date real men.
Lipstick lesbians versus femme lesbian.
Similarly, with gay men, it is sexually desirable for men to act like men, to be masculine, not feminine.
I would go out to gay bars and I would just see how masculinity was so prized. Femme people are looked down upon in the community, our deep fear of the power of women. Anyone who's displaying feminine traits, dating apps, no femmes and mask only.
You're just not my type.
I sent you photos.
You're too femme.
There's a lot of internalized homophobia. I think there's a huge obsession with hypermasculinity. Looking more masculine and acting more masculine to maybe meet other guys.
Why do gay men act so girly?
Masculinity within the gay community. You feel like you have to change yourself.
I and people like me are treated.
This is reflected in newspaper personal columns right up to today's apps. If people who identify as gay are attracted to the looks and behavior traditionally associated with their own sex, then who is attracted to people who are the third gender?
James then manipulated me as a person who may or may not have been trying to figure things out about their sexuality.
At that time, I was bi-curious. I'm pretty sure I was straight. He was kind of playing two straight guys.
Yes, as a gay man, I am into straight guy. A topic that is very confusing and complex and that not a lot of people understand.
I've always been into straight men, and the problem with that, I never found real love because straight men behind closed doors, they love people like me, they love hooking up as long as other people don't know. I really kind of fell into a trap of someone that was kept like the secret.
Transgender and straight men.
We don't have language to describe men who are attracted to trans women.
There's a whole heap of men out there dating trans women.
One of the biggest problems today is the invisibility and confusion of the attraction of straight people toward the third gender. When we were introduced to trans and fluid people, it became clear that things were not as simple as gay and straight.
If I like trans girls, does that mean I'm gay?
An example of this is men who identify as straight who are noticing the existence of the third gender.
Loving trans women. There's nothing strange about desire for trans women.
If I look at trans girl, does that make me gay?
Statistics, social mailing apps and encounters show us clear evidence that most straight men all over the world are not only noticing the feminine beauty of trans and fluid males, but are also showing a deep desire for and attraction to them.
Inside every heterosexual guy, there's a part of them that trans girls push their buttons.
Ordinary British men now proudly declaring their attraction to women with penises. If a man is attracted to a transgender,
he is indeed straight. I feel that he's straight because he is attracted to what's opposite of him. That is feminine energy, titties, hair, looking like a girl, talking like a girl, behaviors of a girl. That's opposite of him.
I don't think I'm gay. I like transgender women. Some of them are so beautiful. So whatever you like, and nobody has to decide, nobody has to label you because of it as if there's something wrong.
I'm into women. I'm not gay.
People have a very big confusion about transgender. Sometimes they think that transgender is gay. It's not gay. It's completely different.
These men usually experience anger or confusion, as society tells us that attraction to a person of the same sex labels us gay. But is it that simple? Let's look at a typical situation that happens today. This is Katie, a person born male, but who has a more feminine nature. Katie likes to express it this way. This is Eric, a person who has a masculine nature and expresses himself this way. Eric finds himself attracted to Katie, but fears it makes him gay, and that his friends will think he's gay if he reveals his attraction to Katie.
What are you doing, bro?
Gay. She probably has a bigger dick than me.
Gay.
She used to be a man. That's sick.
I thought you were straight. She's got a dick.
Yet he is not attracted to masculine men like himself, just some females and some trans girls. How can we begin to understand his identity and attraction? A legacy of shame inflicted on two people of the same sex being together has pushed people all around the world to hide their feelings toward a person of the same sex.
That's sick.
Wait, I'm trying to protect myself from this gay label and being judged.
Why can't he just admit to being a faggot?
Dating trans people, whether they're doing it out in the open or they're doing it secretly, and most are doing it secretly.
Heterosexual cisgendered men will only engage with trans women in the dark and won't be free and out.
I've had men tell me that they're in love with me, but they could never, introduce me to their mother, or they could never go out in public with me or have anyone in their lives know that they're in love with me. And it's really, really painful. Our lives matter and we deserve love and belonging.
He's obviously not the only one out there, but there are very few people that are comfortable enough to go public with it.
All these guys are all those trans women, but none of them ever admit it.
I guess it's the fear of getting labeled as gay.
And there's no space created in our culture for men who are attracted to us to be able to acknowledge that. There's no language for it. Seeing it happen to me so many times on the street, where it's a group of guys catcalling me, one of the other guys realizes that I'm trans, and then he's shamed because of that. And then he has to prove that he is, masculine enough or man enough because of that. We need to create space in our society, and then men who are attracted to us need to have the courage to be able to say it.
Some straight men realize that this is an erogenous zone for them. He's not gay, so he doesn't want to derive pleasure from that part of his body from another man. He doesn't want muscles and a big hairy chest and all that stuff.
Consequently, men who feel they are straight are discreet about their attraction to the third gender and keep it in the dark, sticking to females as a safer option.
I'm a straight man. Why do I fancy a trans woman?
This leaves trans women lonely, invisible, and largely fetishized. Some are swayed into prostitution to feed the cycle of fetish.
Female porn website.
For some men, the appeal of trans women is purely sexual.
He's probably got a bigger dick than me. Get your fucking dick out then. I want to suck in yours. It's the fittest lad you've ever seen in your life. You had a boy for long. I'm the shackle lad, yeah. He's fitter than most of you fucking ugly little trolls. Going to Thailand and not shagging a lady boy is like going to fucking Turkey and not eating a fucking kebab. So fuck off.
The unfamiliarity and misunderstanding of third gender people has caused them more than others to be left jobless, discriminated against, and ostracized from family life. People are afraid to hire them or even be seen with them.
The trans community, the homicide rate is crazy, the unemployment rate, discrimination.
She was fired from her last job after she came out as a transgender female.
There is a strong sense of deception linked to trans people that still lingers in society. The idea is that the person is in a disguise or out to trick people.
That's a man.
He's dressed up like a girl.
When really they are just being true to themselves.
Walking down just a road, do they know? Are they looking at me because I am trans?
Caught with a trans woman, it becomes this huge scandal.
There is a sense of gotcha, like we got you in this scandal because you were with this quote-unquote tranny.
Oh, you could be my girlfriend.
Oh, Brad, I have to tell you, I'm a man.
You felt for that I was a real girl?
And I'm really a transsexual.
I was born a man.
You a man? I'm not gay. I don't go with men.
There's a luxury cruiser waiting for you, Miriam, with £10,000. But before you claim the prize, Miriam has something to say.
See, Tom, I'm not a woman. I was born as a man.
I told you guys.
Tom's decided not to go on the yacht with Miriam.
I'm going to spend a week on a boat with someone who's deceived me and everybody in the house, someone that's lied.
Having been rejected by Tom, Miriam's left to take the Mediterranean cruise alone.
Consequently, some commit suicide. A 2015 survey showed that 41% of trans or gender non-conforming people have attempted suicide at one point in their life.
Psychological effect that it has on trans guys is fucking unreal.
Another teen has taken his own life.
Suicide.
Transgender. There has been injustice and thousands of murders perpetrated on gay and trans people in the last few decades.
Gays are still the victims of violent attacks.
An attack on a gay New Jersey couple
targeted them because they're gay.
Latest transgender woman murdered.
Afraid to go out of her house for fear of being attacked again.
The words given to us to justify this fear or hatred are known as homophobia or transphobia. But do these words illuminate what's really going on?
Also, gay bashing is kind of fun, because when they come out of their, like, gay bars and stuff, and they're walking, and you beat them up, and they're like, oh, leave me alone. They're so fat. Ugh, you know, they're like...
They're wimpies. Is that what you're saying?
Not wimpy, but they're just, like, you know, gay.
14-year-old Brandon McInerney is accused of killing 15-year-old openly gay classmate Lawrence King.
Some men have killed in the name of staying true to their straight identity, as reflected in the thousands of murders of trans women around the world.
There have been more than 400 people murdered due to anti-transgender bias in the past decade.
The attack was savage. A transgender woman assaulted by 5 or 6 men, beaten and shot in the back.
The murder of a transgender Wayne State University student.
One example of many is Gwen Araujo, who in 2002 was beaten, strangled, and murdered by a group of 4 young men. Interestingly, she'd had sexual relations with 2 of the men, who would appear to have known she was anatomically male. Yet it was only when word got out to their friends that they'd had sexual relations with her that these men attacked her. Could this be the impact of a label such as gay?
Gwen Araujo, the teen victim of a brutal attack. Her murder brought national attention to the issue of violence against transgender Americans.
One of her former lovers screaming out, I can't be gay, I can't be gay. Gwen was knee punched, beaten over the head, strangled with a rope.
There are transgender women who are shot with machine guns until they're just pieces of meat, until they're unrecognizable. Women who are stabbed 30, 40, 50 times, set on fire.
We bring out certain fear and a certain anger in some people. Suddenly they find themselves questioning themselves, worrying about how their response to us affects their identity. Suddenly something that they thought was a bedrock part of their identity has been challenged.
Another victim of ignorance was Matthew Shepard, a young gay student who was beaten, tortured, tied to a fence and abandoned in Wyoming in 1998.
Matthew Shepard was beaten last weekend, tied to a wooden fence.
Police said the victim was attacked because he's gay.
Savagely beaten and left for dead.
Хули ты так одет, ебать? А? На нахуй.
Human Rights Watch has released a video showing some of the abuse that gay people are facing in Russia.
In 2013, Russia's government created a law that bans propaganda of non-traditional sexual relations. In the wake of this law, thousands of innocent young LGBT people were hunted down like animals, tortured, intimidated, beaten and murdered by vigilante groups under the false pretext of protecting children against pedophilia.
as gay people in Russia.
There are gangs at work across Russia to lure gay men to apartments, and these men are then assaulted.
He begs for mercy and is told he has a choice. He can lose an eye or be sodomized with a large fork. These groups have grown dramatically since the introduction of a law banning the promotion of gay equality to children, the so-called gay propaganda laws.
Lured and abducted by a group who burned schools, forced him to say that he is gay, that he regrets that he is gay, and then they handcuffed him, gave him a glass bottle, and what they asked him to do is to rape himself with that bottle.
Russia now lives in an age of fear and ignorance. These are just a few of millions of cruel and hateful incidents in a cycle of fear and ignorance that springs from a lack of knowledge and understanding.
2012 alone, 265 transgender women were murdered.
Where did all this come from? What does it mean?
She's aboard. Why is she dressing like a man?
And when will it stop?
Most Americans are repelled by the mere notion of homosexuality. It is, in fact, a mental illness. It is a tragic illness.
Making effeminate boys more masculine. Kids can be prevented from becoming gay.
Against homosexual behavior.
It's unnatural.
And it's wrong.
I don't want homosexuals in my troop.
Build a big, large fence. Put all the lesbians in there. Do the same thing with a homosexual. Have that fence electrified. In a few years, they'll die.
The second you see your son dropping the limp wrist, you walk over there and crack that wrist.
Lift them up and hurl gay slurs at them.
A number of anti-gay attacks in recent months.
Been beaten and left to die.
Violence against the LGBT community. Murders of 2 transgender women. A transgender stabbed to death and run over by a car.
Only fired because he's gay.
Teacher fired for being gay.
Fuel ban barring gay men from donating blood.
Savage murder of a local 23-year-old man motivated by homophobia.
At his head, he was raped by beer bottles, attempted to set him on fire.
Yet again, another teen has taken his own life.
An openly gay 15-year-old boy named Larry was murdered by a fellow 8th grader named Brandon. Larry was killed because he was gay.
Billy Lucas of Greensburg, Indiana, was just 15 years old when bullying pushed him over the edge.
A transgender person was shot and killed.
Transphobia, transmisogyny, racism, and classism that face the lives of so many trans women.
Homosexual behavior is harmful not only to society, but more importantly to the individuals who engage in that behavior.
Murders of female transgenders.
The partially nude body of 23-year-old Brian Shahosky was found in an alley. 2 more female transgenders were found, beaten to death.
Damn, get weird! What's wrong with you?
When is it going to stop?
Looking around us today, it is obvious that the understanding of our sexuality and gender is limited.
What are you doing, bro? I thought you were straight. She's got a dick.
In fact, it appears that our understanding of our entire existence is limited. To crack the gender code, we should open our minds to new ways of looking at things. All we should do is look around us. The answer is everywhere, just like electricity. Electricity is everywhere and nowhere at the same time. Approaching this scientifically, we could, for argument's sake, look at this as energy.
Theory of relativity. The speed of light, which is constant, express their relation to energy in a simple equation.
Physicists Albert Einstein and Nikola Tesla both said that all matter is energy. It cannot be created or destroyed, only transformed. Just like the internet, it is everywhere but cannot be accessed unless we have a medium to tap into it, like a phone.
Between all matter and energy.
The same principle applies to us as people. Energy is all around us, but just because we can't understand it directly, it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Most of us know that electricity is created by the polarity of opposite forces. This is a scientific fact. This balance is the foundation of our existence. It is life and death, night and day, love and hate. It is everything.
Great principles of the universe
nature of all creation.
Polarity of life, good and evil, light and darkness.
The yin and yang, positive and negative.
Everything has an opposite.
How can we begin to understand our sexuality and gender through these two forces?
Well, that's what I thought, so it must be true.
As children, our brain is taught to see ourselves in black and white.
Like a boy, that way we look like a girl.
We're Catholic or Jewish, gay or straight, male or female.
But that's for a girl, and you're not a girl, right?
Our history has reinforced this thinking as far back as we can remember, through separation, wars, violence, and religion. Yet, over the last century, deeper and more powerful evidence of our potential has surfaced. Now, from our understanding of polarity, can we begin to understand ourselves? Let's go back to basics and look at what history may not have told us about our brain. Ancient cultures, such as the Egyptians and the Native American Indians, recognized that the human brain is divided into two distinct intelligences, known scientifically as the left and right cerebral hemispheres. We can recognize this today, for argument's sake, as masculine and feminine energy.
Between all matter and energy.
Masculine intelligence, or the yang rhythm, is linked to the left hemisphere of the brain and the right side of the body. Its energy focuses on what we can see and touch directly, on waking reality, laws, and compartmentalizing emotions.
It hurts inside. I'm a male, so it's hard for me to show those feelings.
Its distinct energy force focuses on logic.
Man is about to land on the moon.
Rationality.
Check flight hydraulic servicing, Cat. Full service.
Discipline.
The armed forces are operating side by side.
Tribe and reputation.
We're just gonna walk be like,
Time. Division.
Its land area is split into two non-contiguous geographical units.
We've defended the borders of other nations while leaving our own borders wide open for anyone to cross.
Science.
Science is a method of description in dealing with the natural world.
Action. Hardness and resistance.
Pull away and do not want to come into physical contact.
Feminine intelligence, or the yin rhythm, is the direct opposite. It is linked to the right hemisphere of the brain and the left side of the body. It focuses on the more symbolic, visual, and indirect subconscious mind, and it is not always bound by laws or logic. This side of the brain is thought to be the link to our higher self. Its distinct energy focuses on intuition.
It's here. Can you feel it? I can see it.
Emotion. Freedom. Self-expression.
It's very important to express yourself, Kate.
Eternity. Totality.
Yes, everything is one.
We are all one. We're all together. We are connected.
Magic. Awakening. Softness and receptivity. Just like electricity, these two forces are opposites for a reason. They are sexually attracted to each other and bring a distinct magnetism, expression, and two ways of relating to life. Balancing both intelligences within ourselves is the key to a healthy mind, body, and reality. We can all flow between the two because we have both within us. However, it seems that most of us are usually more dominant in one or the other. For example, most females tend to be more feminine conscious, and most males tend to be more masculine conscious. Both intelligences exist independently and have no fixed form. It is our culture that has attached idealized gender expectations to our sex.
Girl look beautiful.
That's a woman for you.
How can I get his shirt as white as he wants?
Action. Will you make a copy of this?
Naturally.
How can we measure gender and sexuality by science? A study by the Karolinska Institute of Neurology in 2008 divided a group of 90 participants: straight females, straight males, lesbian females, and gay males. MRI and PET scans measured blood flow to the amygdala and overall interhemispheric connectivity. The neurology scan results showed significant differences in electrical brain activity. Straight females and gay men showed almost identical higher concentrations of blood flow to the amygdala, the area of the brain which governs emotion and mood, while straight men and lesbians showed similar lower concentrations, where the amygdala fed its signals mainly into the sensory motor cortex, showing a more action-related response. It is important to note that testosterone and estrogen are separate hormones and don't define gender or sexuality, but can impact the physical sex spectrum. As sexuality and gender research lacks funding and visibility, it is difficult to conclude for certain, but it would appear that straight women, gay men, and trans women have similar brains, while straight men, lesbians, and trans men have similar brains also, explaining the spectrum of feminine and masculine intelligence and its connection to sexual orientation.
Right now, we are left with the reality of men being ashamed to openly acknowledge their attraction to trans women.
They could never go out in public with me or have anyone in their...
Although the situation has improved considerably in the last few decades, there is still a powerful block which needs to be understood. Men get to dating and sex with a trans woman, then seem to stop themselves from developing their feelings any further. Why is this? And how can we change it? The answers and cure for this are not to be found in superstition or myth, but rather in logic and science. According to many neuroscientists, our brain has a powerful decision-making component known as the neocortex region. When any stimulus enters the brain, it tries to understand it based on previous experiences. In early life, powerful events create a pattern in the brain, activated when we face a similar situation.
Gay, queer.
For example, if we were once called gay for showing attraction towards another male, or humiliated for expressing our feminine side, the brain's electrical neurons will harbor these patterns that are activated every time we have similar impulses, making us deeply fear acting on them again. If our brain works on conditioning us from early life, how can balance between our two intelligences be our freedom? Balance can activate the insular cortex, which is believed to create a bridge between the two brain hemispheres. Consequently, this balance has the power to reverse conditioned thought patterns, bringing us closer to our emotions and ourselves. Our emotions connect us deeply to each other, to euphoria, and to our purpose. Yet men have been conditioned from an early age not to display emotion, vulnerability, or tune into their more feminine intelligence.
You're going all soft on me, bro.
Why is this? And what is its connection to our sexuality and gender?
I believe that it's linked to the death of the goddess in our culture, goddess energy. I'm not talking about feminine with Hello Kitty and pink furry animals. I'm talking about feminine goddess energy and how there was theories that there was a conspiracy to shut it down from the church and all this kind of stuff. Proliferation of patriarchal culture. Biggest reason men using femininity or women using femininity is looked down upon because people are afraid of it.
Masculine intelligence is less emotionally in tune than feminine intelligence. It focuses on tribe, society, and reputation, so it can be more easily shamed. Therefore, we see a huge resistance in masculine men openly dating a person who is transgender. To change this, people should begin to think for themselves and not rely on social norms or authority. Collectively, this will shift our understanding of sexuality, bringing us into the future.
I am straight. Eden is the first woman that I've dated that just so happens to be trans.
One of the reoccurring patterns that I've noticed is in young men, particularly young men aged 16 to around say 25, when they're first faced with their first time seeing a trans girl in public with their friends, they become confused at their attraction and they shame her and they expose her for her biology.
Bro, that's a tranny. She's got a dick.
And they go away and they think about it and it plays in their mind and they begin to realise that they're attracted to this kind of person. I think these men have been taught from a young age not to see themselves as beautiful or amazing. I think they've been shamed because of patriarchy and they kind of shut themselves off emotionally and they have a mask and a social image. All the real emotions are hidden. They come from a completely different headspace and therefore they can find it very difficult when approached with someone that's transgender to acknowledge it openly because it goes against everything that they've been taught from a young age. This needs to end and this needs to end right now.
History has forgotten to remind men of their intense power and potential that comes when they tap into their feminine side.
You're going all soft on me, bro.
Men appear to be at their strongest, at their most sensitive and emotionally lucid. And when balanced, men can be some of the strongest, most magnificent creatures on earth. This reality is just clouded beneath a thick legacy of shame. Words like femininity have been connected to ideas of weakness.
Studies show that from infancy until around age 5, boys express their feelings more than girls. Participants' emotional responses were monitored. The electrodes recorded marginally higher responses from men, recording twice the physiological response women did. But they don't show it. Biology behind it too. When society teaches men that expressing their emotions is unacceptable, they repress them instead. Male suicides begin to rise. Correlation with emotional repression is not coincidental. While society is quick to say man up, it may ultimately be hurting all of us.
We ask our boys not to feel. We tell them to man up. We tell them not to cry because in a patriarchal system, anything related to emotions is tagged as feminine.
Men actually have higher suicide rates than women. We portray the ideal man as being emotionally avoidant. And when women are actually seeking emotional connection, what they face is distance. Homophobia is so strong. In many places, it's very taboo for men to hug themselves or to touch themselves between friends for fear of being labeled as gay. So we prefer to be physically isolated than to be labeled gay. So we need a new kind of man. We need to reframe the traditional notion of masculinity.
This lack of balance in men is reflected in emotional immaturity, suicide rates, and failure to connect in relationships.
A lot of the mental health issues that are happening with young men. I personally think that what these young men need is feminism. When I actually speak to them and get to the core of what's bothering you, man, what they always say to me is, I have nothing to offer a woman. The fact of the matter is that is a patriarchal attitude that is no longer relevant to us in the 21st century. Feminism is not about a female being powerful, it's about redressing a balance, and it's about equality, and feminism is a very necessary thing for young men to have.
One of the biggest fears of a straight male is to have his perceived masculinity threatened. And what better way to do this than call him weak or gay when he taps into his biggest power, the balance of his feminine intelligence.
The thing that frightens men about homosexuality is they think about a man allowing himself to be treated like a woman, and there's nothing worse in the face of patriarchy.
It is the hatred of women that is the fuel of this whole thing.
You look like a bunch of 5th grade sissies after a cat fight.
When the coach wants to humiliate his team, he calls them a bunch of girls. Why does that work? Because the worst thing you can do to a man is call him a woman. Men who are not men in whatever way the patriarchy wants us to be, threaten masculine power, and it's too much to bear.
If you combine our fear of the other, our fear of sex, and our fear of the feminine, homophobia is well-rounded in our psyche.
As our biology is fixed, one cannot be turned gay by expressing his more feminine intelligence. This shaming might be part of a method to control our way of thinking, but why?
I'm convinced that the main problem of it is patriarchy, not necessarily to blame men. Men are to blame, men are in control and dominate women. Patriarchy is an invisible system that's in place that imbalances our left and right cerebral hemispheres, effectively denigrating feminine consciousness. Not women, both men and women can have feminine consciousness.
For a long time, the Bible has been misused to support prejudice, apartheid, segregation, slavery, the second-class citizenship of women. Now it's being misused to condemn gay people.
Everything seems to add up to one root known as patriarchy.
Of all the truly horrifying shit going on in this world was initiated, established, perpetrated, and enabled or continued by men.
Despite what people may think, patriarchy is not necessarily the dominance of men over women, but rather the dominance of a masculine consciousness that has imbalanced our way of thinking for the last 5,000 years, leaving the richness and wealth of feminine intelligence largely forgotten and repressed. We have been steered away from using our right brain, emotional intelligence, because with emotion, we can figure things out. Those who tried to question this religious superstition were often seen as witches and burned at the stake.
People fear the word witch, and it brings up ideas about women's power. We have been propagandized. Fear of women's power, the fear of female power. The word witch, it comes from an Anglo-Saxon root, wick, which means to bend or shape consciousness.
A lot of these women were simply connecting to the more feminine forces, which contradicted patriarchal methods. Now, science and modern reality are pushing us to question outdated ideas of authority and social norms.
We all need to balance both feminine and masculine within us in order to have a happy, healthy life.
Why is our sexuality and gender still so puzzling to us?
I don't think I had the conversation with you that you was a drag. I was like, I could have fucked it. Dad, straight guys go, I want to, but don't tell anyone. You know, I fancied you when you first come in.
Do you know if Courtney didn't have a dick, I'd get to town on that. I'm not gonna lie.
Are we looking in the wrong place? Or are we looking in the wrong way? To understand the reality, it may be time to reconsider what we have previously thought and what we think we know. When we approach one another, we do so from the perspective of male or female, and straight or gay.
Is that a man or a woman? I thought you were straight. She's got a dick.
Leaving no room for the reality of the many other genders that exist, and the people who are attracted to them. However, the reality of our gender and sexuality could be understood from the perspective of a spectrum. Let's imagine gender as a line, mirrored by the left and right hemispheres of the brain. This is Sean, Sean's gender is more masculine on the spectrum. And this is Alex. Alex's gender is more feminine on the spectrum. Because their gender is at opposite places on the spectrum, there is a greater chance of them being sexually attracted to each other by electrical polarity. However, because both are biologically male, our waking world may associate Sean as gay and Alex as transgender. Sean would not be what we traditionally understand as gay. However, we become trapped when we try to express this reality in our current terminology. There is a much wider variation in our genetics than we realize. But we make this invisible through language. One of the ways society erases people is by having no words to describe them other than male or female, or straight or gay, basing our gender and sexuality on our biological sex. However, we are beginning to move forward from this paradigm of being and thinking. Instead of being trapped in terminology, we find our own place on the spectrum.
Gender does exist on a spectrum.
It's a new study that claims of a spectrum of sexual orientation.
We can map out the polarity of human behavior on a spectrum of gender, ranging from masculine to feminine emotions and expressions.
The fascinating thing is, as much as we try to label things, there is no way to label every point on an infinite continuum. And it's a spectrum, and people move across these spectrums.
A separate spectrum can be imagined for biological sex, from male to female, and variations in between.
One thing's clear about sexuality. There's a lot more going on than meets the eye. Female or male, gay or straight. We were taught to see these as binary. Now we're realizing it's more like a kaleidoscope. We see more combinations than that in real life. Hormones can vary wildly.
Finally, considering the laws of polarity, our sexuality can be understood by the attraction of opposite ends of the spectrum and is usually swayed more by gender than sex. For example, a person can have a feminine gender yet embrace being completely male. And a man who has identified as straight could be sexually attracted to this person.
Some people argue natural thing is to only be attracted to the opposite sex. But in practice, it ain't so simple, kids. Some people are gay, some are bi, some will take whatever they can get. You know what I mean? When you throw in gender, it gets even more colorful. By 3 or 4, most kids identify with a gender, and it doesn't always match the sex they were assigned at birth. And a person's gender identity may change over their lifetime. And culture is getting us new ways to express all of this. We have to listen to the science. The science says we're all on a spectrum. I think you'll find when we look at sexuality this way, it is more complicated, but it's also a lot more honest.
When we depart from labels and traditional ways of thinking, we create space to move forward into the future. Transgender women and feminine gay men are simply people who have more feminine intelligence on the spectrum and process thought patterns through the right hemisphere of the brain.
Hi, dragons. It's Epic Vicky.
In contrast, transgender men and masculine lesbians are simply people who have more masculine intelligence on the spectrum and process intelligence through the left hemisphere of the brain.
That I am trans because I was trans.
Some choose to alter their sex on the sex spectrum, and some don't. Either way, their gender remains independent, and they share this commonality. It could be argued that a lot of mask-for-mask gay men could be on the more feminine side of the gender spectrum, but express their gender in a more masculine way to be more desirable.
There's a lot of internalized homophobia. I think there's a huge obsession with hypermasculinity.
Perfect person is, for want of a better term, gay community. I want them to be straight acting.
When we start being ourselves, we break through old ways and attract the right people. Many men prefer to express a more feminine place on the gender spectrum and still be attracted to women, known traditionally as cross-dressers.
That he's a woman trapped inside a man's body. Ian changed his name to Jan, first officer in the armed forces to undergo a sex change.
If Rachel was lesbian, then it would be...
It's your soul. It's about who you are as a person. I had dealt with these issues all my life. I make this character, Bruce, so big, and it's not me.
Considering the laws of polarity, it is very natural for masculine men to express their feminine side, but social norms have ridiculed this, leading to desensitization and oppression. Cure will come from pushing through stigma and gender norms and allowing people to express themselves naturally. The human body has a powerful ability for metamorphosis and change. We can create our physical self based on our energy and intelligence. Features that we might consider typically masculine, such as a square jawline or deep voice, can appear equally beautiful carried in a feminine way. It's just that our minds have simply not had enough experience to observe this yet. The huge number of men that identify as straight and yet find themselves attracted to feminine males and transgender women are not gay, because the word gay itself is an illusion.
The homosexuals, homosexuality is an enigma.
These are simply men who are on the more masculine side of the gender spectrum and are sexually attracted to the opposite gender. This is completely natural and much more frequent than we observe directly. This is also the case with straight females being attracted to more masculine females or trans men. As long ago as 1948, Alfred Kinsey, an American biologist, presented the Kinsey scale, one of the first acknowledgements that sexuality was on a spectrum.
There's a new study that claims of a spectrum of sexual orientation, findings of Alfred Kinsey in 1948, who suggested that people are sort of somewhere on a sexual orientation continuum or spectrum.
Gender does exist on a spectrum, and I would say, like the Kinsey scale with sexuality, from 0 to 6, I'd be like a 4. I think that gender's similar, where 1 is female and 6 is male. I'm close to the middle, but I'm on the male side of the middle, whereas you'd be a 1. So I think that when people start to understand that gender can exist on a spectrum and that your story is different to my story, it is more complex because there's more than 2 answers and people aren't used to that. They're like, male, female, got it. I think just the conversation just will evolve, hopefully.
In the last decade, with the internet and social app revolution, our reality is rapidly shifting.
I'm Luca and I'm the creator of The Gender Code. I direct, write, produce and animate. We've been taught to believe that our sexuality and gender is either male or female or straight or gay. However, in my experience, there's a little bit more to it than meets the eye. There are millions of people who are expressing themselves in the way they want to express themselves, and there are millions of people attracted to us that may not be openly acknowledging those attractions. People like me who are on the more feminine side of the spectrum and are male, hidden away or seen as secret by the men who are attracted to us. When we put all our experiences together, we find a bigger picture of the puzzle. I believe that what we understand as gender and sexuality might not be the way we've been taught it to be. I think we look at things through our social construct. We look at everything through the lens of, is he gay or is he straight? Are you male or are you female? I think we need to be able to depart from our traditional ways of looking at things if we want to look at the reality.
My name is Dean. The Gender Code, belief system that society needs to be changed, how we regard sex and gender. When I was younger, when I was like 5-6 years old, the word gay guy was said. Jack from Will and Grace. You were taught you can't be like a girl. You're gonna like football, you're gonna like boxing. Your life is already mapped out for you. This is the path that you've basically been put on and you have to follow. Society tells us that we need to put ourselves in a box.
My name is Jamie, I'm 20 years old and I identify as gender fluid. I express myself through just not really giving a fuck. I express myself by being who I am. There's no one that can tell me any different.
Hi, my name is Katie. I'm a trans girl from Ireland. I'm 22 years old. I started transitioning when I was 17. It took me a long time to just be comfortable with myself. I've gotten my little bits, surgery and hormone. I feel like I'm finally coming into myself, being comfortable with who I am and my body. I feel like all trans girls should kind of, you know, not be ashamed of who they are and just embrace their body. I feel like it's getting so much better. But society in the past has kind of told trans girls to be ashamed of the masculine qualities of their body. Throughout history, society has always told trans women like myself to pass as a woman and to not embrace their trans identity. I feel like there's beauty in just embracing your trans identity as well. If somebody knows I'm transgender, it's not the end of the world because trans is beautiful too. And I feel like, you know, so much information is coming out in the media now about transgender. And I feel like other people are starting to see that. Men are starting to see that and be comfortable with their attraction to trans women.
My name is Sean. I identify as being straight, but I'm attracted to femininity, whether that's transgender, more so because of the femininity. I don't really see any shame in it, and I don't really see why any other guys should either.
There is a whole world beneath us that most of us probably aren't aware of. There are men all around the world who are very attracted to feminine males and transgender women.
Society doesn't really know this side of things, that straight men are attracted to trans women, they're attracted to feminine males, but it's so true and it's so real.
There are men out there that identify as straight but are attracted to transgender and gender fluid, just feminine people in general.
There's a lot of men, in traditional terms, straight men, looking for the more feminine male, trans girl, femininity they're attracted to. It's all very secretive, all very behind closed doors.
A survey done in 2017 for the gay networking app Grindr shows a rapidly increasing reality of men exclusively seeking feminine males and trans women.
I don't want to be just a 3 o'clock in the morning text, what's up? I want to be visible and I want to be treated with respect. We're living in this world, people that can't be themselves.
Social media today is instantaneous. Everyone wants instant food, instant sex, instant love, instant gratification. So I began to open the apps and I began to see a bigger picture and a bigger story. And it just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger.
As analytics grew, the results were staggering, throwing our whole understanding of gender and sexuality into revision.
I've been using the app for a long time and I stopped screenshotting after a week. I think I stopped screenshotting around 200, and that was in Dublin, Ireland alone. So if you look at the bigger picture and if you look at it across the globe and across not only Dublin but Ireland, and then you get to the UK, you look across England, you look across Manchester, London, Glasgow, Wales, then you reach Europe, and you reach America, Minnesota, Alabama. So if you take that week and you multiply it with all the different countries and all across the earth, you begin to see a very, very big picture. Nobody's keeping statistics or algorithms, so this number is insurmountable. Because apps are relatively new, this is very new territory for a lot of people. Publicly, we don't have enough statistics and education. Most females don't want to believe that their men are capable of being attracted to someone of the same sex, and straight men have nowhere to turn to talk to each other. So effectively, it's a lost world that only gender variant people witness. Effectively, the reality of the spectrum is rendered invisible to the outside world. If you were to ask a gay guy or a girl who is not versed or knowledged in this reality, they'd simply tell you that it was closeted gay guys. But knowing what we know as gender variant or trans people, we're noticing a very different reality. That this is what we know as straight masculine men who are looking for sex from feminine people. We have to be able to depart from our traditional thinking in order to reach this and see the truth. We are in the midst of a cultural, global gender revolution. The phenomenon of straight men being with younger, feminine males is not new. The ancient Greeks revered this, and it was seen as a rite of passage. During the Inquisitions, Spanish captors would keep Native American effeminate males as sex slaves.
Term for catamite, a male slave who was kept for sexual purposes during the Crusades.
Today, this could be easily written off as homosexual, being our only rhetoric to reference. However, when we look closer, we see that the participants were heterosexual men.
Grindr seems like playground for everybody and anybody. It's all different people on different ends of the spectrum.
Being freer with our gender expression can be a higher dimension with richer experiences and authenticity. However, there's limited models to reference, and this is very new territory. Gender feminine people have only recently been given the technology and resources to live their authentic self. Effectively, men are only starting to explore their attractions and notice our potential. Masculine intelligence is not at its highest freedom yet, and effectively the men attracted to us need to start being honest about their attractions. Both sides need to work to create a pathway for this dimension to start to exist in public space. We're not there yet. I've been observing straight men attracted to trans women or feminine males for years, and I've recognized that we've actually been undercounting an entire world of men who are attracted to the same sex. I've called them the missing because we're not actually looking for them, so how are we going to know they exist? And this is a paradox, and this is a reality that does exist and is real. The reality appears to be a language trap. We're looking for an answer in terminology like, is he gay or is he straight? But the reality doesn't actually match up to those terminologies.
When I started expressing my femininity, I guess I didn't even really think of what kind of guys I'd be with. I hung around with gay guys, but none of them were really attracted to me because I was like expressing my femininity. And it's only when I joined like online sites like Grindr that I started getting all these messages from like really kind of manly guys. I didn't know if they were straight, if they were bisexual. Grindr, which is traditionally a gay app, but there is like a trans tribe, and there's definitely millions of guys on that, straight identifying guys who are attracted to trans women or feminine males. It's like an unspoken fact. I have friends who are gay, and they even get like similar messages on certain sites like dating apps from like straight identifying males who are just interested in kind of experimenting with feminine guys and trans girls.
Different people on different ends of the spectrum. They come from a different headspace. We're 100% looking in the wrong way. I was talking to one of the girls one day, and I was explaining to her the attraction of predominantly straight males to more feminine males, and they couldn't get it. Gender is how we see how we present. Sex is how we are as male or female. Gay males, I have been in relationships. We've had the most amazing experience. I've had some of the best sexual experiences I've ever had in my life with straight males. With straight males, I find they are more attracted to the femininity in me. Necessarily, I can't say I've had with gay males. In my general experience of wearing makeup, gay men are very turned off by it. Traditionally, what gay men look for is something they're lacking, and that is masculinity. We all do, but it doesn't make us a bad person. It just means we're looking for something. We should really be looking at the bigger picture.
When I was growing up, the only gender or label that I could identify was a gay male. I was told that it was very unattractive for other gay guys if a guy was feminine anyway. I didn't express the way that is natural to me. But I noticed that something was missing. I wasn't being myself. I always wanted to be feminine, but I didn't even dream that was possible. And I was always attracted to what we would know as straight guys. I never even dreamed that they'd be attracted to me. So I didn't even think about it. If you're not looking for it, it's not there. As I grew up, I started to express myself a little bit more, and I started to do things that come more natural. So I began to find greater happiness and a greater freedom. Maybe at the start it was the only label I could identify with was being a woman, but then later on I recognized that I don't have to be female to be feminine. So gay guys aren't attracted to me, so who is? I noticed I got more and more attention from guys who would identify with the label straight. I recognized that there were certain men out there who had very strong attraction to trans or feminine males or people on the more feminine side of the spectrum. And I noticed that it really didn't have anything got to do with genitals, because they were actually very interested sexually in my genitalia. I tried to understand, were these men gay, were these men straight? As time went by, I realized that the reality is more about being attracted to a person and their gender.
Men are attracted to femininity, so men are straight identifying masculine males are definitely attracted to trans girls. They're attracted to the more feminine males as well because we express femininity. A lot of these guys like to kind of keep this attraction discreet. This is all behind closed doors. That doesn't really sit right with me. The word discreet, in other words, is just their way of saying they're ashamed of their own attraction towards trans women and feminine males. I've had a lot of guys who've wanted to date me in the past behind closed doors because they were ashamed of kind of being seen around with like a trans girl. Like, no matter how beautiful you are, like sometimes guys unfortunately see trans girls as a fetish.
Relationship with Tyga.
Tyga was cheating on Kylie Jenner with you.
Yes, and he was. There you go. Today I said it. I didn't want him to be publicly shamed like that.
These men are beginning to discover things about themselves and discover parts of themselves that they didn't know existed until now. So now, because we have all these apps and this access, all these like new and exciting things are happening. These things that we never thought possible are possible and are happening and are becoming real. I think it's very unfair because people like me are on these apps and we're, you know, just looking to find someone to connect to and to love.
If you on your Grindr profile are calling yourself discreet, I am sick of being sexualized. I'm so tired of being used as a scapegoat for them. We've come to a time where we're not going to accept this anymore. Our idea of gender and sexuality needs to change.
As I'm coming into myself and I'm more confident into myself, and I encourage all trans girls to do this, to not kind of accept to be just seen and treated like a fetish.
Gay people, trans, whatever, we were always on the spectrum on the feminine side, and we're always out. We always had the pride parades. And that was because I feel we're on the more feminine side of the spectrum and we have the male body. So we never really had a choice but to, you know, come out and be who we are. But the men who are straight, as we'll use straight as in pretend it exists. The men who are straight or masculine, they don't need to come out as gay. Understanding gay as something objective, they're not gay, so they can't really come out as gay. But however, with all these apps and with all these new things and Grindr and stuff, trans women are sexualized in the media. They're beginning to turn to these apps like Grindr to try and look for these people in real life. And I think these males are part of the missing puzzle in what we call mask for mask. Handsome, drop to gorgeous guys, and they're unable to express themselves and express their attraction. It's a case of mistaken identity. People are not expressing themselves the way they probably would be at their full potential expressing themselves. I think that the paradox is that there's a lot of guys out there who might identify as a gay guy, holding off on dressing more feminine because of fear that they might not be viewed attractive in the gay community by other gay men. But taking away those labels and looking at the reality, which is scientific, the brain hemispheres, people could be attracted to a gender as opposed to a sex.
I think patriarchy, even though it's died down a lot, I think it still very much exists. I think that affects a lot of gay men's inhibitions to be more expressive. Me, for example, I've always been very expressive. If I feel like wearing something, bitch, you know, I'm gonna wear it. Be more fierce. My answer would be for people to embrace themselves, but also for people to surround themselves with people that want to embrace them and that want to see them fly to their highest potential. You need to be around people that are going to uplift you. They need to find people that they can express themselves around. Us as gender variant people, we need to be more respected in that. We need to be more acknowledged in that. We need to be more clued in that.
I've gotten the respect back that I deserve. I feel like it's possible for any trans girl to have like a straight identifying boyfriend.
I met Juliet in high school. The transgender part really doesn't affect me. People always come up to ask, are you gay? Are you straight? What are you? They just deemed the term Juliet sexual.
Demand respect, because we all deserve respect. If we give respect to people, we deserve it back. Thank God the world is changing. We will get to a place where these guys will no longer feel ashamed to date trans women openly and to date feminine males openly if they desire. I'm not saying that every straight man is attracted to trans women and feminine males, but there's a huge number of men that are.
Social media apps, we've Grindr, we've Facebook, we've more ways of rooting through all this information to really get to the core of who we are. We're getting to the stage now where we sort of understand patriarchy, and that could be a link to a lot of the world's problems today. We look at patriarchy, think it's, you know, hatred of women. I think people like me, gender diverse people, are the missing part of the puzzle. I think we really show people that it's not always men hating on women. Because I'm not female, I'm very feminine. We can't look at this and say men to blame, because we're all wonderful people and we're all the same. I think these words like gay or straight, I think they were written at a time by a certain group of people. In patriarchy, everything is written in masculine patriarchal man perspective of a male. The way a woman should look, how she should dress, was written from the male fetish and the male psyche and what the masculine side understands. These books were written and these laws were written at a time when this was not understood. They didn't have the reality of everyone in mind, such as people like me. The reality for myself and millions of other people around the world, it's not as black and white as we've been taught it to be. I think people would be much more happier if they began to express in a way that they like and they feel natural to them. People who are attracted to a certain type of person or gender be much more happier if they began to acknowledge openly and embrace who they were attracted to without shame or fear. While we're so busy fighting over all these invisible wars, we're really missing out on the fun, we're really missing out on the party. There are males who are feminine, there are females who are masculine on the gender spectrum. There are men who are very much attracted to feminine people, feminine males, and trans women on the gender spectrum. We're not fetish, we're not a CD or a TV or a Sony Panasonic DVD player compact disc. We're people.
The reality appears to be more about an attraction to the person and their gender, rather than attraction to the person's sex. This is connected to the two hemispheres of the brain and the electrical energy that flows simultaneously through the body to create sexual chemistry. We know scientifically that in all energy, opposites attract.
Theory of relativity. The speed of light, which is constant, express their relation to energy in a simple equation,
regardless of the medium it travels through. When we leave behind our traditional way of thinking, we allow a new spectrum to appear. Like electricity, it may not have been directly visible to us, but it has always existed. With this new perception, our entire thinking can move forward. Instead of labeling ourselves as gay or straight or trapped in the wrong body, let's begin to change this and look at it from another viewpoint.
I want to be able to go to Ibiza or go on a night out and chat to a fella in public that's not going to be worried about what his friends are going to think like it's 2018. Shit's changing.
When we begin to see things in a new way and we depart from our traditional ways of thinking, that's what's really going to bring us into the future. That's when the party is really going to begin.
This is the opening party of Ibiza, summer 2020.
This is the current physique I'm bringing to Ibiza.
We're off to Ushuaia.
Every summer, Ibiza opens its gates to the clubbing paradise of the world. It's a place of intense electricity and euphoria. This is Luca. Luca is very yin energy and on the more feminine side of the spectrum. He happens to be male, but identifies as more gender feminine. This is Sean. Sean is very yang energy and on the more masculine end of the spectrum. He is male and identifies as straight. These two people are perfect for each other and would have intense sexual chemistry together. Yet we assume our identities divide us into straight or gay categories.
What are you doing, bro? I thought you were straight. She's got a dick.
And set ways of thinking that leave us blind to higher experiences and potential. How can we change this and move forward? Stepping outside traditional thinking and labels, let's look to something real and scientific for an answer. Right above us is the sun.
Moves in an elliptical path around the sun.
From the opening parties in May through to September, astronomically and scientifically, the sun will rise in the east, travel across the sky, and set in the west. However, from winter to summer, its trajectory will gradually change, moving through a spectrum of darkness to light, setting at a different time and place each day, down to a matter of minutes.
Creating the seasons of spring, summer, fall, and winter.
These in-between stages of night and day are known as twilight, the time of illumination of the Earth's lower atmosphere, when the sun itself is not visible because it's below the horizon. It's a time when the sky is neither completely light nor completely dark. We perceive the sun moving across the sky, but when we change our perception, we begin to see another reality. It would appear that we could correlate what happens in the sky with what happens below and use it as a metaphor. Just like the sun, we are on a spectrum, with many colors and preferences in between. When we ascend from labels, all that's left is pure energy. To return to Luca and Sean. Sean will push forward through social stigma and take Luca's hand in front of the lads.
Go on, bro. Good on you. She's a hottie.
This brave example brings us right into the future, a place where people all over the world are finding their identity, their own place on the spectrum, and beginning to acknowledge gender-diverse people and their attraction to them.
My name is Sean. I identify as being straight, but I'm attracted to femininity, whether that's transgender, more so because of the femininity. I don't really see any shame in it, and I don't really see why any other guys should either.
Humanity and our preferences are diverse and much more extensive than we could ever imagine. Social norms and superstitions have categorized and divided us. However, the power of technology, science, and social media is breaking through old ways to a time when we can define our own place on the spectrum, a time of unimaginable potential.
Welcome back to my channel!
Hey guys, it's Gigi.
I'm Aquaria.
Hey everyone, I'm Ruben DeMaid.
We have begun to insist that our identities, that ourselves exist beyond our bodies, beyond surgery, beyond genitalia.
Social media is really cool because it's kind of like we have metrics that show us how many people are into different things, and we just see that queer culture is on the rise.
I feel like the non-binary conversation really is happening within the younger generation, and I feel like it's the next step.
Gender is a social construct.
Completely ridiculous that we've expected people's identity to be one size fits all.
If someone doesn't stand up and tell the story, then how are other people supposed to know where to go in life?
Half of young people declare themselves as something other than 100% heterosexual.
The hatred, cruelty, bullying, rejection, and discrimination must stop.
Justice! Tell me what you need, what you really need. Justice! How we gonna get it?
We will not be erased.
The trans community needs more representation on television.
We are once again reminded
that the fight for civil rights is never ending, but we won't let the darkest recesses of human nature extinguish the light and hope and love we feel in our soul. As gay people, we get to choose our families. Don't with my family.
Once persecuted and misunderstood as disease-ridden abominations, the world's most powerful visionaries, healers, and goddesses are reclaiming our identities. We bring the colour to life and bring people together. It's time to listen to our story and depart from the idea that we are separate.
We have something that they don't have. We have a secret weapon. Love, music, laughter, colors, dancing, imagination. Those are strong, powerful, moving forces. That's how we inspire. We have spirit.
There's a new generation of people that are beginning to find their own identity, their own style, and their own language.
There's a new breed of young people. They don't identify as gay or straight. Almost a new belief system that transcends the 20th century.
The future is about taking on new meanings of what femininity and masculinity is and embracing it in new forms. It's time to depart from old ideas and attachments to language and words that we cling to and begin to form new identities and new words for the future. There's a spectrum all around us and magic. It's the language and labels and old ideas that we have attached to things that stop us from moving forward. When we break through that and we begin to find new narratives and create new spaces, that's where we will find our power.
Are we ready to shift our ways of thinking and reevaluate old ideas? Have we cracked the gender code?
This is how you throw a party in Ibiza, bitch.
Come see the lots of me, missus.
Okay.
Yeah, people that live worldwide, shout out to y'all.
Look at me. This is 1, 2, 3. So
you're back in the room.
Hallelujah. Is that okay? Will you catch me outside? How about that? Change should be arriving in shortly. Here they shortly.
My name is TSKE. Okay, let's stop now. That's like one little bit. Boys, 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 like boys. I'm done.
Lazy camera, it's so funny.
I'm probably going to fall down the big heap. I don't spin it yet. I have to look at the screen here. I look a bit stiff in that one. Not stiff in that kind of way.
Okay,
I look a bit kind of, I need to loosen up a bit more. Awkward doing this by yourself, isn't it? Woo! Skinny bitch. Jesus, she's very narrow. Said I have big man shoulders. I just farted. Don't put that in. Oh. I just farted again. Don't put that in. I'm just trying to live my best life. I'm not a piece of me. I know I'm a sex symbol, but it's just not gonna happen. I'm gonna come across as the biggest damn bitch ever. I'm full of myself. Yeah. We're not gonna have like fucking promotional. Follow me on Insta. Point? No, don't point, no. Yeah, well, actually, no, you can point it. You want me to just, yeah. Actually, no, the light will do, because we're shining then. Fuck you. Oh no, you're too near the light. Can you step this way? Yeah. If you like, try to say faggot, or is that too mean? Yeah, perfect. More shade, girl. Bit more movement, bit more body and face movement. That's great. I get that. Oh, this is so cute. You want it again? Yeah. Just to hit it? Yeah.
got my number.